I'd like to welcome Julia from Clarmondial to come and share more about Clarmondial's experience as a two-time Convergence Grant Award winner, and also touch upon the work that they've been doing in the gender and climate adaptation space. So over to you, Julia.
Thank you so much, Arusha. Hello, everyone. It's great to be here. I'm Julia and I work for Clarmondial. We are a Swiss-based firm that proactively designs and implements investment solutions within the natural resource management sectors. I've been asked to present as we recently were selected for this grant, which is obviously a great honor. So I will briefly go over the solution that we are developing so you have some context before I answer some specific questions that hopefully are relevant to you as you navigate this application process. Next slide, please. Next slide. Great. So we are developing a long-term financing solution for the sustainable transition of agricultural value chains focused on emerging and developing markets. This means we are focused on the agricultural sector, or more broadly, the agriculture, forestry, and other land use sector. Now, the need for this transition finance, especially for biodiversity and climate, is immense, and the costs are increasing due to various different factors, including, but not limited to the ones listed here. Climate change is obviously increasing sourcing risks and therefore also costs. Compliance costs are increasing due to regulatory changes, for example, with EUDR. Corporates, thankfully, are making climate and nature commitments, but in order to actually reach those targets, that also costs a lot, and they need increased budgets for that, which is what we aim to address. And then lastly, the burden of transitioning and adopting sustainable practices often lies with the farmers. So essentially those least equipped to pay for the transition. And this is a gap we aim to fill with this solution. So the objective of the solution is to catalyze the transition to sustainable agricultural value chains and thereby protect and restore environmental health and resilience within sourcing landscapes. So this means that we will assess sourcing landscapes and identify actions that are required to advance sustainable practices both on-farm and off-farm. The issues these landscapes face are not the same across the board, so tailored long-term funding is crucial to unlock this systemic change. And then for us, a key pillar is to focus on identifying the business case for transforming sourcing landscapes. This means that we will anchor the sustainable actions within export crop value chains that usually drive the local economy as well as livelihoods. So by advancing sustainable actions linked to those export crops, we improve the resilience of these supply chains and allow for diversification of produce and local market products. And then, of course, also based on our previous experience, we will be adopting a gender lens investment approach, which I'll get to on the next slide. If we could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So this will be a blended finance solution. So we will be incorporating a catalytic capital. This approach will help us to reach the necessary scale to make this significant impact. I alluded to the business case before. So the Convergence grant will help us on the one side to incorporate payments for ecosystem services in the transactions and to include them also in the structure. Payments for ecosystem services are important often to actually make the business case of driving sustainable actions within these value chains. So it'll be important for us to be able to do this work, and thankfully the grant will support that. Then secondly, we will be developing a TA facility to support partners throughout the relationship in adopting action plans and the implementation of programs to advance also gender equity strategies. So with the Convergence grant, we will be able to design and develop this TA facility. And then lastly, where the grant will really make a big difference for us is it will enable us to develop a transaction level framework. So for example, a study done in Costa Rica on regenerative agricultural practices may not be applicable in Kenya. So we need to understand the local contexts. And with this grant, we will be able to do baseline studies together with partners and then develop appropriate action plans for the duration of the relationship with our partners. So I hope that gives a good overview, and we can maybe dive into the questions now, Arusha.
Perfect. Thank you, Julia. This made a lot of sense. But for the benefit of our audience, if you could share more about why is it important to integrate gender responsiveness into the climate finance initiatives, and how do you plan to do it for your fund?
Sure. So maybe to the first part of your question. So we are focused on the agricultural sector. And there it is difficult to accurately actually estimate the scale and type of gender inequality in agriculture due to a lack of quality data. Root causes generally can be linked to a lack of access to resources, control over resources, and then also a lack of access to economic advancement opportunities. But the agricultural sector is actually a very important employer and source of income and livelihood for people in emerging and developing markets, including women. So adopting gender responsive strategies that really empower can have far-reaching positive effects, including on addressing food security, driving incomes, and building resilience. To the second part of your question, so we already have a strategy where we are adopting a gender lens investment approach, and we aim to do the same for this fund. So we will be measuring quantitative metrics, but these need to be contextualized in order to see whether we are actually reaching, benefiting, and ultimately empowering or even transforming systems. So we want to be able to adopt an RBE framework for our fund, and that will allow us then also to factor in geographical and subsectoral nuances that influence gender inequality. And so that's maybe the first part. The second part is also finding partners who are aligned and are committed to the cause as well. We have already great partners on the ground who have great, already innovative programs and implementing great training. So really the solution that we're developing should help scale those even further and work closely with them. We will also develop a TA facility, which will help support the partners in implementing those programs. We, thanks to the Convergence grant, can also hire a gender expert for the design and development of the TA facility, and then also for the MRV framework. And then we will develop action plans, which I alluded to before.
Thanks, Julia. I'm sure this is really helpful for some of the audience here who plan to apply. But we'd also like to hear from you. What advice would you give to other organizations that are planning to develop a gender responsive climate finance solution?
Sure. So maybe on the one side, or 3 points come to mind. One is you need to be committed and have a long-term vision. So it takes time to really do something that is effective locally and transform systems. So being committed and finding those partners locally will be very important. And then 2, you need to understand and respect those local nuances and understand that certain solutions may not be replicable across the board. And so finding partners who understand that and can custom or can adhere to those customs will be important. We thankfully, on a third point, have local presence, and that has been very important to be able to support our partners throughout the relationships that we have with them. So being close to your partners is important, and thankfully with this grant, we can even expand our local presence in the markets that we're operating in.
We do have a couple of questions around genders again. So just wanted to ask if there are any metrics that you can specify, if you have anything on your mind right now that you can share regarding the different gender metrics that you will be using. It would be helpful for our audience as well.
Sure, we're in the draft process of that momentarily. Certain metrics, I mean, they're quantitative metrics that you can track. That's also how many females are employed, how many attend trainings, the type of insurance that is given. Those are types of metrics you can ask your partners to potentially provide you with. But then again, that needs to also be contextualized and to understand whether how many farmers you transact with. If there are female farmers, for example, what does that actually then mean? Do they have then access to the finances? Do they control the finances? What kind of decision-making power they have? So while you can, measure certain quantitative metrics, you still need to be able to understand the context behind it.
Perfect, thank you. And last question that we have for you today is just to provide any recommendations that you can share with these prospective applicants who are looking to apply for the program.
Sure. A lot of credit goes to the Convergence team. They really do a very thorough and detailed due diligence. I think, Arusha, you presented it. It was exactly like that. From the questions that the Convergence team asks, it's evident that gender and climate adaptation mitigation really needs to be core to your strategy in order to receive this grant. I think be very clear on what you require the funding for and how it supports your impact objective. And then also back to the thorough due diligence process, it takes time as well. So you need a team that is committed and can, quickly respond to the questions that the Convergence team has. But again, it was very thorough, which made us also think through a lot of things as well. So it was a good process to go through.
Thank you so much, Julia. We wish you best of luck for your fund, and we hope that it launches soon. So best of luck. Perfect. Thank you so much.